Well, dang. We are in some deep doo-doo this time.
We've gotten out of worse, right? We can handle this. I hope.
Didn't you learn anything from all those zombie stories you've read?
Well, Jake, aim for the head and make sure you fill the bathtub with water, just in case all the water gets shut off.
Well, that second one isn't super handy right now, but good to know if we live. Remember when the worst thing we had to worry about was Batman kicking our asses?
Yeah, that all ended really well for me, too. Thanks for bringing me back, but, you went ahead and opened up the multiverse, so we have a lot more we need to face down.
Good thing you're not alone this time.
Now it's more than the two of you.
The gang's all here.
Ooh, neat. The shotgun survived the reboot. Well, there's a whole horde of zombies out there looking to snack on this sweet, juicy booty.
Why are you like this?
Well, are we going to crack some skulls or what? Everyone ready?
As I'll ever be.
Let's kick some zombie butt.
Welcome to GateCrashers, a podcast dedicated to kicking open the door of your next favorite thing. Our mission, our creed, and our code is to make all things nerdy more approachable and accessible for everyone. We want you to find a universe that you're going to fall in love with. I'm Dan. I use he, him pronouns.
And I'm Jake, and I also use he, him pronouns.
And we're brothers. This is the first time with us recording this show, so we're very excited to get started.
And today, in honor of spooky season, we are talking about The Walking Dead.
So I'm a pretty big horror movie buff and just horror in general buff, and Jake does not really love horror. So
I do like spooky season, though.
Yeah, this is my first chance to get him to read something horror. But before we get into the actual content of The Walking Dead, I did want to talk about zombies a little bit. So I want to say that we aren't the right people to jump into all of the racial backgrounds of the zombie and how the American and the Western idea of it is actually a sort of a fear tactic. But I did want to go over it a little bit. So the American depiction of the zombie was taken from the 19th century Haitian voodoo, and they held the belief that when you died from an unnatural cause like murder, you would linger at your grave. During this time, your corpse would be susceptible to being revived by a bokor or a witch doctor, who could keep it as a personal slave, granting it no agency. The Haitians called this creature, suspended in some ambiguous state between life and death, a zombie. There's no E at the end. After the Haitian slave rebellion to gain their freedom from the French, the Western world demonized them as a threat to imperialism. William Seabrook wrote a book in 1929 called The Magic Island, which sensationalized his visit to American-occupied Haiti, where he met four quote-unquote zombies, who in reality were just overworked slaves being used by American manufacturers. What I'm going to do is, when this episode goes up, I'll put some links to some very interesting articles about this topic, because it is important, because this is where the roots of the zombie are from. And it is a very interesting read to learn a little bit more of the history of the zombies. Zombies usually stand in for the outsider or something you're afraid of that you don't understand. But
yeah, because if they're going to just be undead, like every culture has something like that. Mm-hmm. Like there's draugrs and all of that.
Yeah. So, but the more modernization, the more modern version of all of that is that's where it finds its roots. But the quote unquote more modern version of the zombie and the idea of it comes from George A. Romero and The Night of the Living Dead and The Dawn of the Dead, which they also stand in for the outsider, with The Night of the Living Dead starring a black man who gets killed by the police at the end, even though he's the one who's been fighting the whole time. And he's always known for his satire, like his satirical and political views in his films. and he uses the zombies to stand in for them. One that I did want to talk about is the Dawn of the Dead, because I think it does inspire a lot of what we see in The Walking Dead, which is, it's in a mall, and I almost want to call it like a comedy now, just because when I watch it, I'm laughing because it's like mocking the rise of the mall and that sort of economy in the 80s. And these zombies stand in for the consumer they have this unsatisfiable hunger to keep buying these things, and they return to where they know. But I was also reading this article recently about how the zombie genre is most popular during the times of panic and mass trauma, because it does stand in for all of that. It's such an interesting view because you see the rise of things like The Walking Dead after 9/11 in the US, and standing in for that fear of the other, when sometimes that fear isn't, most of the time that fear isn't validated, and it is mass hysteria. So, that was a lot of information, but I thought it would be good to actually give you a little background on what zombies are, because I think with The Walking Dead, Robert Kirkman went in not wanting to explore and focus on the monstrosities of zombies, but more so the human elements of the stories.
And on to series info. So The Walking Dead was created by Robert Kirkman and Tony Moore. First published in October of 2003. The show premiered October 31st, 2010. Volume 1, Days Gone By, creative team, written by Robert Kirkman. Pencils, inks, and gray tones by Tony Moore. Additional gray tones by Cliff Rathburn.
I do want to discuss the gray tones thing, just because we haven't talked about that on the show yet. This comic is in black and white, and we'll get into that in the discussion portion of the show. But the gray tones is just because it is in black and white, you have to add more gray tones to things to give shading and things like that, which is super interesting to think about, because I haven't run into this before, other than in this series.
And I read manga.
Instead of doing summaries with the show now, we're going to move into more of a back of the cover blurb about the series, just to give you an idea of what it's about. So if you want to pick it up, you can, and then you can come back and listen to our discussion about it. So, The Walking Dead follows Sheriff Deputy Rick Grimes' journey after waking up from a coma. When he wakes up in the hospital, the world has pretty much gone to hell in a handbasket, and that would be making light of the situation like it was a walk in the park. Zombies, friends, the world is just full of zombies. They refer to them as walkers in this show, but the intent of the series wasn't to be zombie focused. It focuses on the people, how they deal with the world around them, and their relationships. The first volume follows Rick's first few days in the undead world that he awoke into. His driving motivation is to find his wife Lori and his young son Carl. He meets survivors along the way who become his family for quite a long time in the series.
That's right, everybody. This is a slice of life.
I don't really know if anyone would describe The Walking Dead as a slice of life.
And there's a lot more slices.
Yeah, I'm actually
Just
sad
those slices are people.
we never get to talk about Michonne, who has the katana and is badass.
I haven't read or seen too much past what we're covering, so I don't know when she comes in, but I assume it's going to like ramp up action wise by that point, because katanas. But the themes are human condition, fight or flight, strength, resilience, connection, and loss.
So who might like this story? The Walking Dead has honestly just been a huge staple of American pop culture for the past 10 years. You've probably interacted with it in one shape or another. Jake, when we were going to New York Comic Con every year, remember every badge was The Walking Dead? Like no matter what, every single badge.
Every single one.
Honestly, I think every convention was, I think for Reed Pop at least, until recently. Because when we went to Keystone, it was Batman because of the 75th. Was it the 75th anniversary?
No, 80th.
80th? Okay. The 80th anniversary. So anyone who really likes horror will 100% want to check this out. But honestly, I think it's a pretty good first non-cape comic to pick up, in my opinion. It shows that comics can do a lot more than just like big, giant, bright fights. They can explore pretty much every genre in ways that other mediums cannot.
Because it's a slice of life.
Yeah, people who love horror are really going to want to check this out. And if you haven't checked it out, where can you get it?
So Volume 1 is still free on Amazon right now if you want to read it digitally. There are compendiums for most of the series, which are actually at a great value at this point. Most bookstores will have it, and your local comic book shop will. As always, if you don't have one, we suggest ordering from Third Eye Comics, because they're great. They're also doing a reprint of the series in color right now, so if that fits your fancy, check it out.
Yeah, the color, I haven't gotten to pick up any of the color ones yet.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, I think it's because it's one of the anniversaries or something they're doing it. But I think that, in my personal opinion, I think the strength of the series is that it is in black and white, but we'll get into that. So, if you're wanting to pick up The Walking Dead, give it a reread or anything like that, we're about to talk about the first episode a little bit, but we're mostly going to talk about Volume 1. So, honestly, right now would be a really good time to pause, run to Amazon, pick it up for free, flip through it, it's not too long, and then come back and hear what we have to say, because I've got a lot of thoughts and feelings about Rick.
Lots of them.
All right, so into The Talking Dead, but without Chris Hardwick because he's the worst.
So the series was very different than I was expecting.
So, like, I know you don't consume much zombie fiction.
Flesh.
Yeah.
You know?
What did you expect when you what The Walking Dead is. What did you expect when you picked up the book?
Not as character focused, but I've been reading a little more horror comics, and it seems like it's a lot different than any other form of horror media.
Yeah, I think it falls in this really unique spot where it's honestly a soap opera with zombies.
No, it's a slice of life.
Yeah, I think I read it up until probably issue 105. And then I life got busy and I haven't gotten to go back since. Honestly, I may go pick up the compendiums after this because I really enjoyed this, and I was like,
I do think we have the first one.
Yeah. It was like I opened it and I was like, oh, this is why The Walking Dead is the biggest show ever, like one of the biggest comic things ever. Like, it's like the Ninja Turtles, Batman, Superman, The Walking Dead, Avengers. It's wild that this phenomenon is based on like a black and white comic. But afterwards, how did you feel?
I enjoyed it. I wasn't expecting to watch it and really get into it, but I was like, I may actually, after reading and watching the show, I was like, do I want to read it or do I want to watch it for the rest of it?
And I'll give you a little bit more spoiler information once we get to the show and comic comparison, because they are very different in a lot of ways.
I know that involves some hands.
Yes. So, speaking of hands, let's get handsy with Rick. Rick as a lead.
Let's get handsy with Rick.
Rick as a lead in the show
you can get more handsy with him the TV version than the comics version.
Rick as like a lead in the comic is in after the show I was like, I can't stand Rick because he's very, very different in the show, and I watched it up until probably around Negan, but he just was like a very different type of character. But in the comics, when he wakes up from his coma, his whole world is different. And like from the start, we don't see him as this kind of macho leading man character. Like, he doesn't have those aspects to him. Like, he's not super like buff. He's got a lot of empathy, which you don't see in a lot of like leads from my experience. So starting with the character with that and showing his emotions over the state of things is really why I think I loved this comic so much. And the way he deals with the dead, like, when he opens that door, you can see how horrified he is.
So Rick goes back to the zombie he saw lying in the woods by a bike, and he cries when he kills it.
Rick's like handling of all this is like very emotional. Like it doesn't come easy to him. Like killing people isn't something he wants to do. And at this point, he doesn't really fully understand the extent of the zombies. So like this scene is a lot. And then there's just like these emotional beats with Rick where he like tells the horse about the day Carl was like, he gets a horse later. And he gets
the horse like within like the next like couple of pages.
But he like tells the horse about the day Carl, his son, was born, and it's just heart wrenching because he says talking about the good times just makes this harder.
Yeah. So then when he finally reunites with his family, it's just he starts hugging them, and it's just a good panel.
So like one of the biggest things is when he finally does reunite with his family, and he's sitting by the fire with his wife, and he's just like, she's like, "Oh, Rick, you're shaking." And he's like, "I haven't had time to be scared." This whole like human element of the character. And like after that, you see him waking up the next morning. It's a full page. It's like a full spread for this. And it's just him looking at his wife for a couple panels and just touching her face because like he was in a coma and then he woke up and there was nothing except the undead other than when he meets Morgan. So it's just like Kirkman writes this very human character in a very inhuman situation.
So then there's when Rick is talking to Morgan, back a little bit before shooting that zombie, and he's talking about the house that Morgan and his son are living in is the Thompson's house. And what do you think about this one?
So it's like the fact that like Rick is talking like the world hasn't ended. It sucks because like the reader, you and I, are like, oh no, dude, stuff does not get better. Like it does not get better from here. Like there's no coming back from a zombie apocalypse. And the fact that he's like, oh, you better not mess up their house. It's like, dude, everyone's dead. The Thompsons, I'm gonna take a shot in the dark here. If I was a gambling man, I'd put money on it, but the Thompsons are dead. Just straight up dead. Like
Gambling Dan.
I think honestly, Dan. I loved the first interaction after him being in a coma. Like the first human he meets is Morgan. Because
the first human he meets is his son, who I don't think he has a name at this point. I know he gets a name later, right?
He does. I don't think I wrote it down. No, he doesn't interact with him, Jake, because the
shovel interacts with him.
Yeah, so the first interaction he really has with humans is Morgan, but the first interaction a human has with him is hitting him over the head with a shovel. Because he assumes he's undead, because, like, why would you ever believe anybody is alive? Like, it's such a scary situation. But him and Morgan, like, this is where you really understand that Rick isn't Rick is a genuinely good person. Because, like, the way him and Morgan talk is just, like, wholesome in like such a bad situation. And one of my favorite things is when him and Morgan are in the police station and Morgan's like, honestly, I'm just happy to have another adult to talk with because all my son wants to talk about is farts.
I mean, at the end of the day, don't we all?
Yeah. That's the premise of the show, right?
Yeah.
But like after he says that, Rick laughs, but then he's like, I gotta feel guilty about this. Like he just like the fact that he's laughing during this whole crisis is like really hard. And like you could have had that joke scene and then moved on, but like actually driving home the fact that like he feels bad that he's laughing when his family is just out there. Shows that Rick is like actually like really scared. But he can't stop to feel that. Yeah, but Morgan responds with that. He's like, you just have to keep going. You can't stop to think or you're going to go crazy.
Yeah, I thought it was a nice touch that Rick gives him a car saying it's his job to help people because he's a sheriff's deputy.
But he also says, once this is all over, you just got to bring it back, so don't ding it up. Rick, bud, not good. Like, it's over. It is all over. Is that the inkwells? The ink spots? It's all over that one. If I was a better multitasker, I could pull up the song from the Fallout soundtrack. But something that like the fact that Morgan has a kid, like there's no other kids for him to interact with, and like when they get to the camp,
that's segue.
Yeah, you like that? I'm getting better. I'm getting better at this whole podcasting thing. Seeing kids in horror isn't like all right, you see a lot of kids in horror, but usually they're the horrifying thing because kids are terrifying. They're always sticky and they're like always a mess. They are. Like kids always like their hands are always sticky and you're like, don't touch me, get away from me.
Always clammy.
Yeah, like, get out of here. But seeing kids, like horror and children is usually the children are the horror. But with this, you're having kids interact in a world that is horrifying. So when Carl is talking to another kid in the camp and she's like, oh, your dad came back. I really hope my dad comes back. And he goes, ain't your dad dead? Like so nonchalantly because like they're kids. They don't get it. Like they don't, the finality.
Kids don't have empathy.
Yeah, I think they lack that, but they also lack the understanding of the finality of everything. Like, at this point, they don't. I don't know what they saw in between the coma and Rick getting here, but
Carl kind of learns that the finality.
Yeah, it's just I love the idea of like having to see people grow up in a world like this because it's scary. There is I am going to talk about Fear the Walking Dead at the end of this because I'm on like season 3 now. But the new Beyond the Walking Dead, whatever the new Walking Dead show is about post, like there's like societies quote unquote set up now, and it's about these 4 kids going out into the undead world, and it's awesome because I think a sort of young adult drama does really well in this world because like growing up and the uncertainty of everything it's really good.
What a coming of age story.
It's wild. I really like the new show. I'll give you a ranking right here. My official ranking of the Walking Dead shows. Fear the Walking Dead, probably the new one, and then The Walking Dead, because it drops off after a while. It's gone too long, and finally they're shooting it in the head.
So they already shot it in the head.
No, and I think this is the last season. But they're going to make more. They're making spin-offs and things like that.
I mean, the comic is already ended, so.
Yes, the comic is over.
I'll probably just read the comic, because I do like Rick more.
There is a, I want to say there is a one-shot.
Wait. Hold on. I don't know if this is going to be a spoiler for the show, I guess. But didn't they kill off Rick?
No, he leaves. This quote-unquote government takes him, and they're in the new show.
Government?
Yeah,
there's no government.
There's like a shadow. It's wild. I think there is... let me see if this is real. But I'm pretty sure there is a one shot of no, it's not a real alien. It's just called The Alien. About Rick's brother. But it was written by Brian K. Vaughan. But it's called The Walking Dead, The Alien. I just assumed it was about an alien. I don't know why. Like for this whole time, I
tried to look up what the cause of the zombie thing is. And there's nothing, concrete. But I think Kirkman joked about making it a space rock.
Yeah, I like the idea that there's no. So my biggest bugaboo with the show is it's the fact that they try to the first season is a miniseries. It wasn't a show yet. The last episode they go to the CDC and they're like almost tell you what it was, but I hate the idea of finding out. Like I don't want to know because it's not important to me. I feel like the idea
it doesn't set it up as a mystery.
Yeah. It shouldn't
it's not bees.
Yeah. It's just it is what
it's
it
not
is.
Bees, boys.
And they have to live in a world that is this. It's just how the world has become. But I do do like when people try to give it their own reasons, either religious, supernatural. That is something I'm super into. I love when people give it their own reason. And
Do
then
you mean
live
like
and
the
die by
reader,
that.
or do you mean the characters?
Characters?
Okay.
I don't care about fan theories. I mean, I do, but like, I'd much rather have a character tell me this
The only fan theories I care about are my own.
bat wild like thing idea they've got. So, I'll get back. I want to get into that a little later because I want to talk about Fear the Walking Dead, but I'll save it. There is one character like in their little group that has like I've been thinking about since I read it, and that's Jim, the mechanic, who doesn't really talk that much. Glenn tells a story of he made it out of Atlanta because his family was, quote, shielding him from the dead, and he was just running. Like, he was just trying to get away from the dead, and his whole family got torn to shreds. Like, he doesn't talk much. He's always eating, like, beans or just whatever. But when the zombies do get to the camp, there's this moment where he starts just slamming, I think it's a hatchet, into the head of a zombie, and it's just screaming like, you killed my family, you did this. And it's like this cathartic experience of him getting all this pain out at the zombie that isn't the one that killed his family, but the idea of them is what it was. And that I think is just like and then he does get bit. Spoilers, sorry. So it sucks.
I thought it was nice that he was like, yeah, don't just like put a bullet in my head, just leave me here so maybe I'll find my family.
Yeah, that's
like he'd
rough.
rather be with his family as a zombie, as a walker.
Yeah.
Instead of
just dead.
Yeah.
Who is your favorite character?
In the comic or the show?
Save the show one for the show part. Who was your favorite character in the comic?
I haven't read enough to be able to tell you for sure, but I really do like Rick.
Mm. I know you did mention liking Glenn. I know you haven't seen him a ton in the comic, but he's great in the show. He's great in both. I really like Glenn. I do want to talk about the zombie guts as like a shield, like putting it on yourself to like kind of trick the undead and then moving slow.
Yeah, like deer pee.
Yeah. Yes. You know, I don't think about
the exact same thing. Exact same principle.
Yeah, I get it. I just didn't think about that
Deer
until
bums.
now.
I don't hunt, but I know something about this.
It makes me think. Have you ever seen Shaun of the Dead?
Yeah, I've seen Shaun of the Dead.
So when they're about to go to the Winchester and they're like, "Oh, how are we going to get over there?" and they all just kind of act like zombies and it works.
They just kind of limp down the street.
Yeah,
making noises.
We watched that recently. Shaun of the Dead is such a... It's funny because Shaun of the Dead is really what brought the zombie movie back. Like the zombie movies weren't super popular at that time, and that was the first one to really come back and like make it a big thing.
Which is interesting if you also think about slashers and Scream.
Scream killed slashers.
Yeah, I know.
Because it was like, hey, you can't make this movie anymore.
But it led to Scary Movie.
Yeah, God. What a time where there's a parody of every genre. But I do want to... I know you have a lot of thoughts about art and things like that, so let's talk about the black and white aspect of the series.
So I thought that was really good. I thought it was the best choice because you can see the damage in a very clean way. I mean, with zombies, if you add color, it can become... I mean, depending on who's doing the coloring, but it probably can be really muddled with how much is like going on, and it's going to be hard to keep it consistent.
And it becomes more of a gore fest at that point.
Yeah, like it's just like, oh, this zombie's got so much blood on him, but like you're going to want to keep that where the blood is on the body consistent, and that's just going to be...
Huh, I never even thought about that. It's easy. Like it's better to do that.
Like, I mean, good colors can do it, but like...
Yeah, but like just the fact that like... I think it removes that element to the point that you focus more on the characters and the lettering.
Yeah, like you can see the wear and tear in a different way. Like you can convey a lot through color. You can also convey a lot through line work. And sometimes one will drown out the other.
Yeah, I guess I didn't even think of it that way. Yeah. I think the power of this book is that like it's focused on the lack of color sometimes. Also, we didn't talk about how Robert Kirkman lettered this, which I don't see a ton of. The writer also doing the lettering. Sorry, we forgot to mention at the top.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, he did the lettering. I don't know if he did it afterwards, but I know he did it for this because it's in the front. I forgot we didn't mention that at the top. I think it's just interesting that the writer also lettered it because that gives him choice of where the word bubbles go. And I think it's pretty interesting to see a writer have that responsibility. I
mean, the black and white also helps with that because there's a lot less going on in that negative space.
Yeah. I think a style like this would not work for every book, but I think it works perfectly for The Walking Dead. Yeah, I really enjoy this series that it just like focuses on the humanity of these things and like tries to dig deeper into that, like how people would do in these situations, like their fight or flight, and like how they're handling all of this trauma and violence and just at the end of the day survival, like how they're doing that. Yeah.
So then there's the debate over Carl having the gun.
I think that is actually not funny because it's a gun, but
yeah, no, it's not funny. I mean, it does end up with him killing Shane.
Yeah,
to save
so
his
Lori
father.
Doesn't want him to have it, but he also saves her when the zombies invade the camp.
Yeah,
like
because she fumbles hers.
Yeah, the idea of having like a child having a gun is horrendous. Like it's bad in this world, but like in The Walking Dead, it's the difference between survival and death. Like,
I mean, you also got to think about the history of the gun, of the role of children. Because like 100 years ago, a child having a gun is going to be a lot less, more acceptable than it would be today.
Yeah, I think it's the shedding of the modern world is...
Yeah.
Wow, that sounded so highbrow. But you know what I mean? Like civilization is gone. Like there's... Literally, the cities are just packed with zombies. So living out in the country and this kid having a gun is what's helping him survive. So it's...
Yeah, it reminds me of like a Western where someone comes onto the homestead and it's the first one to run out is the young boy with the gun. The shotgun.
And I think that's really like the law, like that signifies like that loss of innocence. Like these aren't being a kid in The Walking Dead is very different from being a kid in the world today. I mean, there's a lot going on right now, but I think Shane, the whole Shane thing in the comic is done a lot better.
So
like
I would like to talk about that in the comparison of the shows.
Yeah, we can talk about...
No, I would like to say that in this now because it's important to Shane. Shane, in the show, has an affair with
Lori.
Why did I forget her name? But in the comic, it's a one-night stand of, oh God, the world is ending. Lori's like, oh, my husband is probably not alive. And it was a moment of passion and fear and just raw emotion. And they sleep together. And the show builds up. It kind of just tears down Rick's character in a way.
Yeah, like
it gives them marital troubles that Shane hears about, and then it makes you question.
He manipulates it.
Yeah, he manipulates it, but it also gives you a question of. I mean, I don't know much going forward, but like, you go, were Shane and Lori doing these things before?
I think the biggest thing is like the fact that Rick kind of sucks in the show. Like I remember,
oh, absolutely,
when they were talking, it's his fault. Like he's just not a good dude, which sucks because Rick in the comics is like he loves his family, and that's like the entire reason he's alive at this point. So I also like that in the comics Shane gets killed a lot earlier because I really I hate Shane. I do not like Shane because he is the exact opposite of comic Rick. He's this macho bullshit. I cursed.
You did.
That's the first one, so we're still
We
hitting that
cursed
non-explicit.
in the opener.
That's fine. So, but he's like not allowing the camp to be moved because he's like, oh, there's no other safe place. I can keep them safe here. It's like he doesn't.
It's
even
an ego
see,
thing.
Yeah, he doesn't even see outside of his own view, and that gets people killed. Like he is the reason they're still there, and the zombies come. Like, but he will never accept that, and he keeps putting this weird blame, like it's not my fault at Rick, who's like, dude, I'm your friend. Like I'm here with you.
But I mean,
I'm
that
not
has
your
more
enemy.
to do with the fact that it seems like he's also dealing with both anger at Rick for coming back, but also guilt over, sleeping with Lori.
I don't know if it's guilt. I think, like, for me, my opinion on that is that he's mad at Rick for even coming back. Like he's like, I
think
saved
it's
your
both.
family.
I think it's definitely both. But
well,
but
he doesn't have any good feelings toward Rick. Like he's angry at him for most of this story.
Mm-hmm.
So like he's like,
He's
Rick
just got a
back,
lot of emotions.
and everyone gravitates towards Rick as well. Like people like Rick because Rick isn't.
He's charming.
Like, yeah.
But like,
And like he's losing the point of leadership, which in his macho ego-ness, he's like, that was my place. And like Rick is giving these people guns. He's helping them teach how to shoot, how to protect themselves, and they won't need Shane, just like Lori doesn't need Shane. Like no one needs Shane, and that is what sets him off. And then he pulls a shotgun and tries to kill his former partner and maybe best friend. Until Carl caps him.
Caps him right in the neck.
Yeah, like through the neck.
Which is like wild because you could, like, if someone walked by and they didn't know it was a gunshot, what's the place that most of these zombies are biting? They're going for the neck.
Yeah, it's the juiciest.
Yeah, it's where all the veins go.
But yeah, that whole scene is very, like, Carl kills Shane because he's about to, after socking Rick, he's pointing a gun at him, and Carl shoots him dead. And he's like, it's not the same as killing the dead ones, Daddy. And Rick, the volume ends with Rick hugging his son in the woods saying, it never should be. And like that dynamic of it's not the same to kill these undead as it is to kill humans, and his son has done both, which Rick is also struggling with, but a child has made that decision. It's a lot. It's really it's an emotional. There's a lot of emotional impact because they build up to this moment, and they do it very spectacularly because these characters all have the elements of like humanity and they feel fleshed out. Especially like, even though I hate Shane, he's very well fleshed out with that whole like anger.
Yeah, it's toxic masculinity, but you have an understanding of he's got emotions. He just doesn't know how to deal with them.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the show. Fun fact about the show, though, Tim Daniel, who actually designed our new logo, thanks Tim, was in the first episode. He was a zombie. He was working with Robert Kirkman on the book, doing some stuff with them and helping set up Skybound. But he's in the first episode, which is very interesting because it's funny he created our new logo and we were already planning to do The Walking Dead. So, other than Rick, what do you think the biggest differences between the show and the comic were?
Pacing.
Mm-hmm.
The pacing is miles apart. Like, I mean, the show adds a lot of characters and a lot of scenes. Like, getting out of the city happens a lot faster, and just between Rick and Glenn in the comic, it has nothing to do with all those added characters. But I think those added characters were a nice touch. Just because and I think the way they get out of the city with the way the changes to the zombie blood smear thing is with the overcoats so they don't have to. Because realistically, that would ruin those clothes forever.
Yeah, I don't know if that's what they're worried about, but I think there's a lot of spare clothes to go around right now. But yeah, I think the pacing is very, very different, especially in the action. I think there is a lot more action in the show, so it can't have those quiet moments. But I think the thing that like has stood out, like what I've thought about the most since watching and reading, is the use of guns in the show versus the comic. So when they're at the police station in the comic, Rick is about to shoot the zombie, but Morgan stops him and is like, no, don't do that. It'll attract more of them. Here, use the screwdriver. But I'm pretty sure in the show, he shot the zombie through the gate.
Oh, and
right?
I think so. But then there's also the situation with Morgan's wife that is added in the show.
Mm-hmm. I think that actually, I do like that. I did like that bit. Morgan in the show is very good. He comes back later.
Yeah, doesn't he have a relationship with Michonne in the series?
I cannot remember.
I think I saw that on the wiki, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, but the gun, like they use guns a lot more in the show than they do in the comics, if memory serves me correctly. But I think you need that for a show. Like, I'm not going to watch a show that's just like people pushing screwdrivers through fences all the time. You need a little bit of bombacity to it. So it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense in the context of if you shoot a gun, there's going to be more zombies.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I wanted to bring up the whole Morgan thing, because he does pick up the sniper rifle and aim it at his wife in the house. A house that is just going to get attention to and basically just lock them in.
Oh, I didn't even think.
It's not a good setup, because you have to look out where you have to know your exit route, and it's a character beat that works, but it also creates problems in a survival situation like that, which you really need to think about.
I didn't even read it as I was reading it emotionally rather than like practically. Like if he shot that, he would have died and his son would have died. So he had to stop himself.
Yeah,
like, I mean, all those thoughts.
I'm only thinking about that because the idea of guns in this, not using guns, is a practical decision. And this is not a practical decision. It is a strictly emotional one.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't do that when you're watching out for your child. Mm-hmm. Also, Morgan is wildly different.
Yeah. Yeah, Morgan is a little bit more grizzled in a way.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about the Fear of the Walking Dead, because I just need somewhere to talk about it. I'm super excited about it because it's awesome. It's set like right at the beginning of the apocalypse, like not the apocalypse, like the beginning of the beginning of the outbreak. And like you see like the army and like those types of people falling apart and things like that, which is something I really like seeing like those government things that people think will protect them falling apart. But I want to look at the Wikipedia and not get spoilers for myself. So
I've already ruined the entire series for myself.
Yeah, I haven't got any spoilers for Fear of the Walking Dead, but there's this character Nick who I love. So Nick, the biggest thing about Nick is that he covers himself in blood often. Nick is a recovering addict in the show, and in the zombie apocalypse, it's harder to get the drugs he wants. But he feels more like the dead than he does the humans, and exploring that whole thing is so interesting to me. Yeah, but he's often, dude, he's usually just head to toe blood, and he just walks through crowds of zombies. Yeah, oh yeah, straight up.
Well, hold on, what was his drug of choice?
I think he does pills.
Okay.
But he relates to the dead more than he does to humans, which is
sad
because he's like really going through it. There's also a character named Victor Strand, who is he's hilarious, but they meet him. Also, there's some there's a lot of political things in this show. The government takes people and puts them into the cages. And that's where Nick meets Strand, and Strand is a survivor even in the world before. Like he makes money off buying debt and things like that. He's such an interesting character, and like I love him. They get like a yacht. It is awesome. Like another reason
a yacht?
Yeah, dude, they get Abigail. The yacht is like a super yacht.
I mean, I feel like that's a good place if you have some fishing rods.
Yeah, that is an element. Yes. It's awesome. Fear the Walking Dead. Another reason I think I like it a little more is because I don't know the story. Like going from the comic to the show, like I knew what was happening and like what was going to happen. So like not knowing when characters are going to get bit or die is like exciting
Also,
to me.
you don't have a preconceived notion of those characters.
I love it. That's what I've been watching anytime. I don't have much free time, but like when I do, it's spent on Fear the Walking Dead. Yeah, but other than that, I really like horror, so I'm excited that we get to talk about it with this new format. But is there anything that you're reading in your life right now, Jake?
Oh, American Vampire, and I'm reading all of those in trade. And what else am I reading? Something is Killing the Children. I've been reading a lot of more horror comics this month because of October and Halloween. Getting in the spooky season, you know.
Nice. I just read the time this comes out, it'll be out. The Last Ronin, the TMNT, the Laird and Eastman getting back together thing. It's awesome. It is really good, and if you like Ninja Turtles, I highly suggest you go pick this one up.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I also always flip the Ninja and Mutant. I don't know why. Yeah, but next episode, maybe coming sooner than you think. Give a little hint before we go.
Dream on.
Never sleep again. See you at the same bad time, same bad channel.
No, same new bad channel.
Oh, we're a new bad channel, aren't we?
Same bad time, new bad channel.
It's the GateCrashers.